Okay, and I just want to. All right. Okay. I apologize. There are days where systems reboot. Sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's this, and then all of a sudden the thing that was working an hour ago isn't working. And there are some things that only IT can fix, and that was the issue in the other room. So I apologize. I'm glad. Uh, I've had classes where the inconvenience was far more than this, so for that I'm happy. Oh, just requesting to record. Sure, sure. Okay. Um, welcome. So in our series, there is kind of like a mini series within this lecture series. And the mini series was just to kind of start with each group of birds and to go through them one by one. And on that sense, this is exciting because this is the last night for that. So from here on, we can talk about birds in general, birds and food chains next week, fall and winter birds, spring and summer birds, environmental issues that affect birds. But as far as, the raptors, the waterfowl, this is the last of that series. As I go through, clearly that the birds of today are the warblers and the sparrows, and they're exciting. However, it is still a great time of the year to go out bird watching. So just let me share something with you at the 6.5 sanctuary near Goshen along the Heritage Trail. I've been there 3 times in the past week and a half. And on each of the times, I've seen more than 200 waterfowl. And 2 of them, I've been over 400. So green-winged teals, there was one day it was like 190 some, the other day was 250 some. That's a really big number. And so it is just a wonderful time to go out. And on that, I'd like to make an announcement with a slight change. This Wednesday, I'll lead a hike there. Now, uh, I'm a little rushed and I'm not always completely there. The hike was scheduled for when it always is scheduled. When I do hikes over the summer, I usually start at 5 and then go till 6:30. So you might have seen advertisements saying this Wednesday at the Heritage Trail, a nature hike bird walk from 5 to 6:30. Now, what I didn't realize is what a couple of you just by your laughter already have. I forgot when daylight savings time kicks in. So there's not going to be a bird walk at 5 o'clock, So it's going to meet at 4 instead. So I apologize for any inconvenience, but I, forgot that 5 o'clock is not a good time to go birding afterwards. So if you're interested, once again, it really is a great time. There's been harrier hawks in there, a snow goose, Carolyn. I'm sorry, I don't know where you're sitting in this room. Where did she go? Oh, there you are. Okay. I'm like, how did we lose you? No, as you pointed out, an interesting thing is the Liberty Loop is a good place to see snow geese in the dead of winter. When it's really, really cold, you'll see big groups of them. But there was a lone snow goose right by the trail. So just like if you were on the Heritage Trail, like right to where that apparatus is, you'd see a snow goose all by itself. Just, beautiful birds are migrating through. About a week ago, I was still seeing yellow-rumped warblers, which we'll talk about tonight. So that's, just 10 minutes up the road, 15 maybe. And that's a beautiful place. Someone asked earlier, where is the Bashakill? Oh, the Bashakill is just over the border in Sullivan County. You can get at it a couple of ways. Route 17, if you're going to Wurtsboro, you get off at that exit there where it meets Route 209. But that is a wonderful preserved area. And you have these flat trails. It's an old railroad on one side, and it's the old D&H Canal on the other side. So we are just, not only do we have such great diversity around here as far as birds, but we have such great trails. I mean, they used to be railroads, so they're just flat, just so beautiful. If you can get out, that would be that'd be wonderful. And also, if you go and you find these areas, these organizations would love to have you. Audubon would love to have you if you're interested. The Bashakill Area Association would love to have you. There's others, bird groups like the Marins Group, et cetera. So if you're looking for like-minded, individuals to go out birding with and sharing, experiences with, this is a great place to live. Did anybody have any questions before we start with warblers tonight? Yes.
Competing with your voice.
Let's try.
Okay.
It's just flying out. I don't think. Can I do the blower? Okay, I don't think I can do the blower. Sorry. They won, all right. Sorry with that one too. It's always something. So, okay. Um, so all birds obviously are special in their own way, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that bird watchers very often have a very soft spot in their hearts for this group, which is one of the reasons I kept it last. I want to focus primarily on warblers, and with whatever time is left over, the last group of sparrows. So we can make that long or short depending on the amount of time which remains. Uh, when birders go out, a lot of them like, oh, these are the warblers I saw today. They will lead with the ones. So they're small birds, but here we are. We're in the 116 species of wood warblers classified in the family. Okay. So we're in the songbirds. So as we started our series of birds throughout the semester, we did things like raptors and the herons and the owls, and those are bigger birds. But songbirds, they're all pretty small. Ravens are as big as that group comes. Like ravens are the biggest songbirds in the world. So most of them are very small. They have a modification of part of their trachea called the syrinx, which allows them to make songs. And this group is special for that. So like bird watchers, whose songs are you trying to learn? It's the warbler. So the yellow warbler, it's making the song that sounds like sweet, 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 I'm so sweet. The common yellow throat is making the one that sounds like witchity, witchity, witch, that, birders are trying to get, the cadence of all of these. So not only are they songbirds, but they're the songbirds that bird watchers, tend to like the most. Also in this group, they've modified their foot. So they're the perching birds. So instead of songbirds, you could call them the perching birds. And you can see them here. They're not going to spend much time on the ground or wading near water like others. They're going to be grasping at the on the branches. They were named because people coming from Europe said, oh, these remind me of the warblers we used to see, back in the old country. And that's a different group. All right, they're related, but it's a different group. Their group is very musical, but not as pretty visually. So these wood warblers, they're American. All right, so these are New World warblers. We have about 50 of them that we could see in New York State. And that then gets into both the fun and the challenge of what I'm going to go through. Now, I think I'd like to just kind of start introducing you to a lot of them. We'll just talk about them one by one, but then some themes will start to appear that, apply to all of the group that we can work in here and there. So here's one. Oh, beautiful. It's called the American redstart. These are the males. All right. The males are sometimes called Halloween birds, as you might guess. The black and the orange is an unusual color combination. So very, very striking. If you've so before I ask who hasn't seen, has anyone ever seen? Who's fan of the American redstarts? Great. All right. Not a lot of hands.
There's a little stand.
Okay. Not a lot of hands went up.
Right by the door.
All right, I'm sorry. There's
a little black
someone I can hear in the background. I'm going to just mute you if that's okay. Where'd you go? All right, I'll mute you next.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you. But if you look at where it is, you'll see it's up in the top of the tree. So one of the questions I'll be asking throughout and hopefully answering throughout is, why are there so many warblers? I mean, like, for example, like raccoons. In this area, we have raccoons. There's just one kind. All right, we don't have like, oh, here's all the variety of raccoons. No, we just have one, and they're kind of generalists. Everywhere you go, you can find a raccoon. Whereas the warblers, oh, there's this one, there's this one, there's this one, there's this one, there's this one. Why so many, and how can there be so many? One of the reasons on how there can be so many is they've all split up Orange County habitats, so they're not directly competing with one another. So when I say that this one likes the tops of trees, the canopies and subcanopies, that's not true of all of them. We'll go through some other examples. And so this one isn't necessarily competing with the other ones, which aren't going to be the tops of trees. The fact that it likes the tops of trees means is probably the reason why a lot of you haven't seen it, because you'd notice that, a black and orange bird, they are certainly neat birds. And is often the case. The females are not quite as brightly colored because the bright colors can attract predators. And then the females, very often, if they're going to be the ones more responsible for sitting on the nest, are not overly eager to attract that type of attention to their selves. So this is a female redstart, and her coloration instead of black would be more of an olive. Instead of the orange spots, they would be more yellow. Redstarts are interesting in that most songbirds look like adults by the time they're done, like they get into their first winter, like, they look like adult males and females. Whereas redstarts will have you can't see the birds. All right. So I'm sorry, let's boil down on this. I'm sharing my screen, so you should be able to see the birds. Okay, hold on. Are we sure? So, people at home, is anyone seeing the bird? Like, here I'm sharing my screen, but you're not getting it?
Yes, I'm getting it.
Okay.
Now I am.
Oh, okay, good. Good. Okay. So I'll just go back in case and I'm sorry, I'm in another room. We've got some apparently multiple technical glitches. If anyone is having trouble seeing the birds that I'm pointing out, just please raise it in the chat or something, and we'll do everything we can to fix it. So they have what's called a subadult stage, where the immature males will stay yellow until their second year. Now, they'll try to court females, even though they're still yellow. Sometimes they're successful, but most of the females want nothing to do with the immatures until they get the black and the orange coloration. But that does protect them from the mature males, because a mature male, if it sees another black and orange male in its territory, it's going to go after it and defend it, but it'll tolerate the immature males, which look like females, which every now and then one of them might mate with the female in the male's territory. So, maybe that works to the young male's advantage on occasion. So anyway, this is a redstart. All right, and just, beautiful birds if you get a chance to look at them. And here's just more images where they're up in trees. If you're a photographer, you love the warblers, but you also hate the warblers. And this is not the last video where you'll get this idea. They don't stop moving. So little birds that don't stay still and that keep among the branches. If you're a photographer, you come home and most of your pictures have either focused on the branch right in front of the bird or the branch right behind the bird. That the good pictures you get of warblers are often few and far between. But in any case, so that was one of our warblers. Here's the one that, if you've seen one, I'll bet you this is the one that you've seen. It's called the yellow warbler. And as you might guess, it is a yellow bird. It has some orange streaks on its chest. And it likes open spaces. So there could be trees, but they're smaller trees, often bushes, and often near water. All right, so if you're near a wetland, low trees, pretty open, that's where you're going to find this one. So redstarts and yellow warblers, they're just not going to be in the same place. Once again, some people would say, "Oh, I recognize it by the sound. It's saying sweet, sweet, sweet. I'm so sweet," is the cadence that it likes. At the Bashakil, when we were doing our Nature Watch programs showing everyone bald eagles who stopped by, and that's something at the Bashakil I'll be helping out with our co-director Nora Brzezinski. We have staff, and actually I think Liam is in the audience. He was one of our volunteers. Hey, Liam. Just having a scope on bald eagle nest. So anyone who stops by, we say, come look at the bald eagles through the spotting scope, and It's a neat experience. Anyway, this was right by the boat launch, a yellow warbler nest. Now, one of the big threats to warblers is a bird we mentioned last time, the brown-headed cowbird. Brown-headed cowbirds lay their eggs in warbler nests, and the cowbird young will be bigger, and they'll take all of the food, and then probably push the young ones out. And so that very often the warbler parents are only raising cowbird offspring and, gathering all this food and only feeding the cowbirds. And it's a problem for the warblers. That's one of the reasons their numbers are declining. Yellow warblers seem a little bit better at guarding against that than others, because if they notice cowbird eggs, they will build a nest on top of the original nest, crushing the cowbird eggs and including any of their own eggs. And apparently I've read that you can have as many as 6 tiers of yellow warbler nests as they just keep building on top. So they're better able to identify the cowbird nest, especially compared to one of the next ones I'm going to mention. Yes.
That's not a copy to that instead of just getting rid of all the eggs.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's, they've gone to the trouble of like, here's my territory, I'm defending my territory. I found, a small tree which is strong enough, whether, that's something they build on. Why they don't say just, I'm going to kick the eggs out, I don't know. Yeah, and one of the things I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm just punning, with a lot of nature, a lot of times it kind of is the way it is. When we study the way it is, if I were to design nature, which no one has asked me to do, like I might do it this way, or you might do it that way, and that might have an advantage. But other than that, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. This picture I like a lot. The orange is a little bit brighter. And if you ask, so if you're a birder, you say like, wow, like I've never seen a yellow warbler quite that bright. That's because this one is not necessarily an Orange County yellow warbler. This one I photographed in the Virgin Islands a couple years ago in March, because they can't winter here. All right, so they were here all summer, but they eat bugs. All right, so warblers can eat a couple of things, but bugs is the main thing. So they are one of the early ones to leave during migrations. So our Orange County warblers are in the Virgin Islands right now, or they're at the tip of Florida, or in their Central America, or they're in South America, as are most of this group. So this group is really what we mean when we say neotropical migrants. So some birds from Orange County, they go to Georgia, all right, or go to Louisiana, but some are going to Central America, to Northern South America, and they're farther distance, and there's problems with that, especially with climate change. And so at the end, I'll mention that with a few things that apply then to all of the warblers. Here's another one. So if I were to rank the ones you're likely to have seen, this would be my guess for number 3. This is what's called the common yellowthroat. And the reason it has that name, the common yellowthroat, is because it has a yellow throat, but then there's another warbler that has a yellow throat that's called the yellow-throated. So the common yellowthroat, that's what this one is. The males are easy to see because of that big black mask. And notice how close it is to water, because that's where you'll find them. They like water, like low bushes next to water. That's where they are. So the ones I'm going through, they could all live in the same area, but they're not really competing because they're not, in the same bushes, in the same, tract of land. Now, this is what not only do females use to to see some males, but males do too. They've done an experiment where if you take a stuffed bird and you paint a black mask on it, then the other males will attack it and see it as a rival and try to defend their territory. So it's the black mask that the males are using to go after. The females, however, they really like the yellow throat. Apparently that's when they're judging males as for possible suitors. It's the richness of the yellow throat. And that's because the birds are getting the yellow pigments they use in feather production from their diet. So a male that's eating really well has a nice yellow throat. A male which isn't quite as healthy wouldn't be quite as yellow. So the females are getting an idea of how healthy their males are otherwise.
Dr. Dan, are all warblers insect eaters?
I would say that all warblers are mostly insect eaters. There's like, for example, there's a worm-eating warbler, that's its name. But the yellow-rumped warbler, which I sold one a week ago at 6.5 Station, they still might be around. They are a little unusual in that they can incorporate a little more plant material. They prefer not to, but when the bugs are gone, they can eat poison ivy berries. They can eat, berries which are in the fall. A lot of birds are like that, like robins. What do robins eat? They eat worms. Well, in spring they do. All right, but once the ground starts freezing, they can't find worms, so they're eating fruit right now. So a lot of birds are like that, they may preferentially eat this in a certain season, a majority of their diet. But then when the seasons change, they shift a little bit. So some warblers are better at shifting than others. That's fairly common that insect eaters in winter are eating a little more plant material. So this would be a female yellow throat. So obviously the yellow throat, but missing that black mask. All right, now I know she was here a second ago. We'll go back here. So if you're a birder, you have to learn male versus female. But also then fall can be different from spring, and immature birds can look very different too. So somewhere in here, I'm sorry, I just saw it. There was a female which was much duller because this is her first year. All right. So if you're trying to identify, birds, you can say, all right, I know what a male looks like. I know what a female looks like. Well, as we'll see with the yellow rumps, males in fall can look very different from the males in spring. And now by this time, the ones which hatch this year and this female, this is her first year, looks different from how she'll look next year. So if you're a bird watcher trying to identify stuff, warblers can also, give you a lot to identify. And I want to be fair because I think as a bird watcher, I'm guilty of this. I know what male scarlet tanagers look like. Females are much harder to see. They're kind of a greenish in color. It's the males which are the bright red. And the same thing with so many other kinds of birds. Like that's the male red start. All right. And females, once again, look like this. So, obviously, if we're learning to love these birds, we should, love to observe the males and the females, but very often the males are a little more brightly colored. And so very often someone might say, oh, I don't know if I've ever seen a female redstart or a female yellow throat. So just, to be on the lookout for those. There are more warblers. I'll just start running through them. Black and white warblers. Okay, you can see the reason for this. And I think at the end of the last session, I played my warbler song where, how can you tell a black and white warbler because it's black and white? How can you tell a yellow throat warbler has got a yellow throat? So, not all of these names are creative. This is a different one because it likes bark. It likes bark and moss that grows on trees. So while you're finding the yellow throats near the water, the yellows in open areas, the redstarts in the canopy, this one reminds you of a nuthatch, if you know what they are. It's just kind of going up and down the bark, looking for the little bugs inside. So once again, you can have different warblers in the same area, but they're not really necessarily competing with each other for food because they've split up the habitat into all of these different niches. So there is a black and white warbler for you. I'm just going to zip through this, but obviously this is my YouTube channel at Dr. Jan 41. So, if anyone's interested, all of these are available. On the, not too creative, notice that this warbler has a chestnut side. It is called the chestnut-sided warbler. Okay. So once again, all of these attractive birds. I'll start to get in just one thing to maybe focus in on as we go through. You might start to get the impression, wow, there's a lot of these. Well, there is. And then this raises a question for them. Who do you have sex with? I've raised this question before, like with humans, like if you go on a bird walk or you go to a bird presentation and then, a couple of you at the same table, you meet for coffee afterwards and you hit it off and you say, oh, I might ask this person out, for a date or a movie or whatever. I asked, did you ever like stop yourself and say, wait, the person I just met, are they human? All right. It's a silly question because, if they look human, they probably are. All right. Just because in the world we live in, there used to be different species of human. There was Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, etc., but not anymore. There's only us. So if someone looks human, they are. But as you go through the list of here, there's a whole lot of these little birds with a little bit of yellow on them, about the same size. And so in springtime, they have options, all right? But now, who do you mate with? And that's one of the reasons for the colors. Like, oh, this one has the chestnut side. This one has the black mask. This one has, all of these things. And for all the different songs, because now, how do you sort out like who's in my group versus the other groups? These are important. There is a black-throated blue warbler and a black-throated green warbler. We'll get to those. Here's the black-throated blue. Beautiful, beautiful bird, kind of like a slate blue, but notice black head and throat. All right. They also tend to like denser forests, so you won't find them in open areas as much. Right. So here, once again, I have seen like these are one of my favorite warblers just visually, and I just don't have that much good footage or videos, but like they just don't stop moving, and so these little birds in here are just they can be frustrating. All right, and so here they are. Here's the male calling to the female, etc. So that is a black-throated blue warbler, but then, as I promised, there is a black-throated green warbler as well. So you'll see a black throat, but more like a greenish olive back and a yellowish face here. There was one at 6.5 Station about a month ago, so that was kind of exciting. So they aren't overly common, and they like conifer forests. And so, we're not as likely to see them. And they just migrate through. A lot of these are not our summer warblers. They're just on their way to Canada where they breed, or down to, their neotropical areas where they will spend the winter. So this is one of the migrants, the black-throated green. Once again, it specializes in conifers. This one has gold on its wings, and it is called the golden-winged warbler. And I'd like to talk about this in conjunction with the blue-winged warbler coming up. Now, while they're trying to sort out who is in their group and who not to have sex with, if they're closely related, it might not be a perfect system. All right, and we know that like dogs can still mate with wolves and produce hybrid wolf offspring. There are coy wolves where coyotes can mate with wolves, and then just lots of examples of that in nature, like ligers and tigons and the like. And in our area, golden wing warblers were unusual to see, but they were here, and blue wing warblers were unusual. But blue wing warblers, the next ones, they've been expanding their range northward. And that's a problem for this species, which is now becoming less and less common. Not only are the blue wings taking over their habitat, but also they're closely related enough that they intermate. Now, I'm just going to say this and run away and move on. But if you're trying to learn your warblers, so you've got the golden wings, you've got the blue wings, but now when they hybridize, you get two new groups that have their own names, like Lawrence Warbler is one of them, and I forget the other one. But just like crazy variations that you could see. Here is its relative with whom it might mate. Occasion. This was from the Bashakilda summer blue-winged warbler, which is becoming more and more common in our area, which once again is a problem for the golden-winged warblers. Okay. This one has a hood. Cleverly, it's called the hooded warbler. Okay, so it has a black hood. This one likes the tops of trees. All right, I haven't seen them that many times, so this is one of my few variations of this. In spring, there's this one is very pretty with its black striping on it. It's called the prairie warbler, and it makes a song that just keeps ascending. And notice if you hear something that just goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up, that's a prairie warbler. Here you'll see it just went after an insect that it found as it jumps from branch to branch, looking at those. Now, a lot of these warblers are very attractive, just like lots of bright colors. But that's not true of all of them. There are some called water thrushes, which have more of a sparrowish coloration, brown. And this one you have heard but it has more dull coloration, and so you might not recognize it as much. It's called an ovenbird. All right. If you get a really good look at it in spring, like it has a little orangish stripe, but a lot of them you just see kind of like a drab brown, bird. But it makes a really loud call in the woods. So if you're just walking in the woods, it's the middle of summer, and in the middle of summer days, you don't hear a lot of birds calling, but all of a sudden you hear teacher, 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 teacher. That is an ovenbird. So I'm sure that you have heard them. They're very loud and frequent callers. That would be one of our warblers here. Oh, let's not start with autumn. Let's end with autumn. Okay. So a bird which is nicknamed butterbutt, or more officially, the yellow-rumped warbler, you can get an idea of the bright yellow spot above its tail, in addition to yellow other places as well. These are, I believe, North America's most abundant warbler. So we have more of these than any other kind. But if you're thinking you've never seen them, it's because they don't spend their summers here. They're in Canada, all right, and north of us. However, in spring, they have to get to Canada. So they are really easy to see during the spring migration, which is just one of those things that if you're a bird watcher, you try to go out like in all seasons. Because if you say, oh, it's still a little chilly here in April and early May, I'll wait till it gets a little warmer. Well, then you've missed them. All right, so that they're an early migrant. And once again, because they don't spend their summers here, we're just getting them as they travel through to Canada. So they are a neat bird to see. In answer to your question earlier, here you see one. They're in poison ivy plants, and I do have video, I think this is them, where they're eating the poison ivy berries. If not, they're somewhere here. So in autumn, they don't look quite as bright. All right, for a couple of reasons. They're not trying to attract a mate. All right, that most of them will find a new mate in next season. So a lot of birds are what we call seasonally monogamous, that they partner up, but just for this year, and then they'll separate, and then they'll find another partner the next year. And so these in spring will have bright yellow coloration on them. But why bother now? I mean, they're done with their eggs for the season. They're not going to be seeking out a new partner for a new months. And bright coloration would just attract predators. So in autumn, a lot of birds that you may like, oh, I love yellow rump warblers. You probably do like how the males look in spring. In autumn, so that's a male in spring, and you're like, ah, what a colorful bird. I like seeing those things. But now here, you have to look really careful to get the little glimpses of yellow here and there. So autumn bird watching is a little trickier than spring bird watching. Once again, the males aren't sitting on an obvious perch making as much noise as they possibly can with bright coloration to attract females. So yellow-rumped warblers, because they can eat some plant material, they're often one of the last warblers you can see in fall. So that is neat. Another early migrant is what's called a palm warbler. All right. So if you wanted to lay money, if you're going out bird watching in spring, what are the first two you're going to see that season? It would be the yellow-rumped and the palm. All right. And if you were to say, all right, well, notice the leaves haven't even come out yet. That's why you won't see most of the warblers, because they will eat the bugs on the leaves. But palm warblers will feed a lot on the ground, going after worms and things like that. Most warblers don't do that. So here, once again, they've kind of split up their habitat. And if you're getting confused, oh, there's so many little birds to know. If you see one going on the ground, you would say, oh, all right, that's probably a palm, because the other warblers, they don't feed on the ground. So, little hints, so that was weird, the fact that it was on the ground. Most warblers don't do that. Here's another image that in autumn, not quite as bright as it was in spring. So autumn bird watching is a little harder to do that. This is a beautiful bird, the northern Parula warbler. It has blue on it. So this is it in spring at the Bashakill. Just beautiful, has a kind of a mossy patch on its back. I saw one along the Heritage Trail about a month and a half ago. Its fall coloration is a little less than it otherwise would have been. There are others, but at some point I want to say a few words about all of them. So that's a water thrush. They're kind of like sparrow colored. This one is also got some slate gray and some yellow. It's called a magnolia warbler. They kind of like pine forest, cerulean warblers. And when I said there are 50 of them in North America, and the fact that there's males and females and spring and fall coloration and immature versus adult, and then you have all of the songs. Obviously, we could spend a bit of time on these. But just to kind of wrap up the warblers, and here's my silly song. I know some of you have heard it, and some of you at home might not be able to hear this. All right, so I can play it at the end, but people at home, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can always hear the songs here. We worry about the warblers for a whole bunch of reasons. One, a lot of them are losing habitat, like we're draining wetlands and cutting forests, and so there's that. As we cut the forest, we're getting more and more cowbirds in an area. So you can have an area where most of the yellow-throat parents are raising cowbird offspring, more of them than their own. So obviously that's a problem. And compound that to the problem that neotropical migrants face. What birds try to do is it's hard to be a bird, especially if you're going to be a bird that wants to fly from Brazil to Canada. I mean, that's a lot of energy you're going to need. And so the way to make that work is you've timed it so that along my flight, I'm going to be hitting the bugs just when they're coming out to eat the leaves. So the leaves burst, the bugs hatch so they can eat the early leaves, and the birds want to come so they can eat the early bugs. But the problem is our climate has been changing. And so when are the leaves coming out? When are the bugs coming out to meet them? It's changing, and Georgia birds know that. Georgia birds know when it's overall been a warm winter, so they could kind of change their migration based on that. So if we in New York, we're a little warmer, the Georgia birds know that, and they could change their migration. But the ones in Guatemala, the ones in Brazil and Venezuela, the ones in the Caribbean, they don't know that. They're not using whether they're using photoperiod. They're just saying, I wait till the days get this long, and that's when I fly north. But they might have missed that window. So they're getting fewer bugs on their way up, which means, it's harder for them to make the migration journey. When they get there, maybe they lay fewer eggs. So there's a whole host of problems that these warblers face. That would be one of them. Yeah, you know.
Is there any species of warblers or birds that eat the gypsy moth?
I think a lot of them would a little bit. When gypsy moths go crazy, there are a lot of birds that eat them. It's just they're not eating enough. And I think your question goes to, are there any birds that are really good at eating? Because I think a lot of birds do. But are there birds that are so good at it that they would really make a dent in a booming population? And the only one that I've heard are the cuckoos. All right, so cuckoos, which aren't super common, I've heard they're really good with gypsy moths. And other than that, I know a lot of birds do, but like if you were like certain areas in this area, early like June it was this year, you look at the trees and you hardly saw any leaves at all. Like there are birds eating the gypsy moths, but there were just so many of them that I just don't think.
I grabbed the gypsy moth as the caterpillar face,
Mm-hmm.
and it stung. It's like
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
But
yeah. Those bristles, yeah, they can get you. Yeah.
I'm just curious what birds do.
Yeah, so with all of them, most birds can't eat poison ivy berries, but yellow rump warblers can. And cedar waxwings can. And so as we look at like the digestive tracts of birds, a lot of them have something that sets them apart from all the other ones that allows them to eat that. But what that would be, I'm not quite sure. And one of the problems is because gypsy moths have only been introduced to North America, it's been maybe 100 years, if I know the story correctly. Birds can adapt to new food sources, but 100 years is not a big window to adapt in. So, here's a foreign invader from Europe. I don't know, I'm sure birds can get adaptations to better feed on gypsy moths, but I don't think many of our birds have mastered that. Well, that is the warblers are just a favorite of birders. But I also would like to just give a little shout out to the sparrows in the remaining minutes. And as we finish the sparrows, this would then be a summary of all of the the bird groups of Orange County. And then we can get back and revisit them like, oh, what are they all doing in spring? And we could get to, each of the groups and mention them again. But this is the last time here. Sparrows, there are some surprises here. I think as we go through this, like you might say, like, oh, I would like to see that sparrow, and then, but they can also be challenging. So here's a little mix of both. So two of our sparrows have white on their heads. All right, and so these white stripes, all right, that makes them a little more obvious. One is called the white-crowned sparrow. All right. And then we have a white-throated sparrow. You'll see yellow, you'll see white on the throat, also like a yellow spot above the bill. All right, so here's a nice white-crowned sparrow. You can see a bunch of those. Okay. So there's some white crown sparrows, and here you can see the white-throated sparrows. You can see some there. All right. So, they can, have some bright colors, which they show. Now, I showed you a second ago a white-crowned sparrow, eating, hopping around on this grassy area. Some of you may know I cheated on that one because that wasn't Orange County. That was the Chicago area near the Great Lakes. So white-crowned sparrows, you'll see them now. All right, they're a really good winter bird, but they're not here during our summer. They're farther north of us. Unfortunately, in winter, they can have slightly duller coloration. These are females, and immatures can look like that. All right. But you can get some ones with the white crown as well. So white crown sparrows, if we were to go through our sparrows, they're kind of fun. And once again, this is a winter bird for us. So, even though you might not think winter is a good time for birding, winter is a time that you'll see birds that you don't see any other time of the year because they spend, this is, near Florida, Orange County. This is where they come south for winter, and then they'll go farther north. So this is from the Liberty Loop along the Jersey border of Orange County, a male and a female white-crowned here. White-throated sparrows, they have something unique in them, in that they have two variations. One has white stripes on the head, one has tan stripes. And you think, fine, that's common enough to have different color morphs. But they're always about 50%. Half of them have tan stripes, half of them have white stripes. And you're thinking, okay, male and female. No, that's true of many birds, maybe most birds, but not true of them. So there are tan striped males, tan striped females, white striped males, white striped females. And the white striped females will almost always mate with tan males. And the tan striped females will almost always mate with white striped males. So this is interesting, all right? Now, not only, there's genetics here, and I would love to go into the genetics, but let me get through all of the, through the sparrows and maybe come back. The chromosome regions which control the white versus tan stripes, it ends up genes have clustered there. So it's not just the color genes which are there, but also genes which affect like behavior. So the white stripe ones are more aggressive and the tan stripe ones are not. So I'm just going to describe this as sensitively as I can. I always find it hard to talk about like bird courtship and bird partners because people always start reading into like, if this one's cheating on that one, like that affects how I feel about this. And so let me just, go through it. It's a fascinating thing. So if you have white striped males mating with tan striped females, the white striped males, all right, they're going to be like a little more aggressive, which means that's a benefit. That's really good. They're defending the area and the nest so that there won't be predators which bother. So there's a benefit to this male that's going around, defending the area. But the female is going to be left with all the childcare. All right, the white striped male wants nothing with that. Okay. In contrast, when you have the white striped female and the tan striped male, they are both aggressive, not as aggressive as the white striped male. All right, so they'll both defend the nest, but they'll both then take care of the young. All right, so here are two systems in the same species where the offspring are getting parental care and parental defense. But it's worked out that, you know, the way that they match up, you're either getting one gender do all of the defense and one all of the childcare, or they share it equally. And that's pretty unique in, you know, mating systems. So, you know, here we have something interesting in sparrows. This is arguably the most common in our area, called the song sparrow. And if you notice, and this would be something you notice first off, there are a lot of sparrows. So one of the first things you do is look for the chest and look for stripes. All right, so if you see stripes, then you put into this group. It's the ones with the striped ones. And if you don't see striped, it's in the other group. All right, so there's a lot of sparrows, and your first job is to like start to divvy up your group so it becomes easier to distinguish between them. So stripes on the chest, that's what you want. So this is a striped chest one, often with a big black dot as well, called a song sparrow. Okay. Song sparrows, the males never stop singing. A lot of birds they sing during breeding season, and that's it. They just keep singing and singing and singing all summer into the autumn. They sing during the day. In cities, you can find them singing at night because the street lights are throwing them off, and they think that you know, it's dusk. Now, they may go, you know, 8 seconds and then sing again, and then maybe 8 seconds and then sing again, and sing maybe like 2,000 times in a day. So that's a lot. Like, they're putting an awful lot of energy into these songs. The songs vary a lot. All right, so, you know, and that's another frustrating thing when you say, oh, for a bird watcher, what does the song sound like? Well, it usually sounds like this, but it can sound like this. You know, there can be hundreds of different variations on these song sparrow songs, and thus someone can listen. Like, by someone, I mean another song sparrow, and say, "Oh, that's my mate. That's the male in the neighboring territory." Like, I can tell because the songs are that distinctive. All right, so song sparrows, that's a common one in our area. In summer, look at that nice bright red, reddish brown on the head. That's a chipping sparrow. All right. It's also got like a white eye stripe. And I said summer because there are a lot of sparrows, but believe it or not, they vary a lot over the year. Chipping sparrows, you're going to see them in summer. You could see them in winter, but it's unlikely. So this is a summer sparrow. The white crowned sparrows, that's a winter sparrow. And there's more coming. So when you go out bird watching, you know, you might pick up your bird book and say like, oh, there's so many sparrows. But if it's winter, these are the ones you're likely to see. And if it's summer, then these are the ones you're likely to see. So, you know, that can help your bird watching a little bit too. Chipping sparrows, this is a summer sparrow. This one's hard to see, a swamp sparrow. So it doesn't look that distinctive. Its face is more of a grayish brown, etc. But it lives in swamps. Like you have to be in a swamp, sometimes with waders, in order to see those. So once again, that helps you if you're, you know, you look at your bird book, you say, how will I possibly learn all of the sparrows? Well, if you're not in a swamp, you're not looking at a swamp sparrow. All right. So in summer and swamps is when you're going to see that. And so, you know, that's kind of interesting. Here is one that's in the summer. It's called a field sparrow. And notice there's no streaks on the breast, and it's got a pink bill. All right, so things like that, like there's so many of them. Like, how do I identify a sparrow? Does it have streaks on the breast? No, so it's in this group. Okay, so this one has a pink bill. All right, so, you know, that would be things which help me. Tree sparrow, here's another one. Oh, but this is a winter sparrow. So once again, the white crowned and the tree sparrows, you're not going to see them in summer, but you'll see them in winter. So you go out in winter and you're saying, oh, I'm going to look for this one and this one. And its bill is interesting in that it's a bicolor bill. So if you look at it, it's darker above somewhere. I've got better pictures. All right, but if you can see there, like, look at the bicolor bill. That's a way to distinguish between that. Then there are sparrows we don't get to keep. They just migrate through. So I got to see this Savannah sparrow, which has some yellow on it. Here, so that's a cute little sparrow. If you go to the Jersey Shore, there's a bunch of sparrows. There's like seaside sparrows, etc. So sparrows are quite diverse. And to be clear, and I probably should have included the video here, but it would take me a few minutes to find it. There's what's called the house sparrow. But that's different. That's an invasive. Europeans brought it with them. It's a European bird, and it's not in this group. So New World sparrows, like the warblers, wood warblers, they're an American group. They're not from the old world. They're in the Americas. The New World sparrows, they're an American group. There are sparrows in the old world. That's a different family, though. So the house sparrow was brought from Europe. So the one you see in cities, like I'm from Philadelphia, there are sparrows everywhere. That's not these guys. That's the introduced one here. So, we use the term like the Baltimore Oriole reminded Europeans of the Orioles they knew in Europe, but it's a different bird. They're not closely related. Same thing, these sparrows, they are related, but it's a different family, the New World sparrows, compared to the Old World sparrows. And when I say related, just they look that way, but you can also then compare their genes. And so here's a surprise for some of you. Here's one more sparrow. And if you were thinking the sparrows are hard to identify, well, this would be an exception. Dark-eyed juncos, they're sparrows. All right. So they're just different from, most of their cousins. So they are in the New World sparrow family Fringillidae. And we will probably get them in winter. Every now and then, a lot of these birds, if you look where their winter range ends and they're non-breeding, like, Orange County, New York is close to that. So depending on the weather, you might get one you don't expect. But these are winter birds. So once again, winter, birding can be fun in winter. You just go out knowing I'm going to see different birds. All right. So among the sparrows, the juncos, the tree sparrows, and the white crown sparrows, they'll be birds which are us through winter. Some of them are just darn hard. All right. And then so I have a video to just like if you were to see this one, it's a swamp sparrow. It's probably an immature swamp sparrow that I saw. All right. But if you were to just like it's just process of elimination. Here's an adult, here's probably an immature. Just good luck. I mean, and there are days where I think it's this, or even Merlin didn't know. Like I used pictures of the same bird, and Merlin gave me 3 different identifications of it. So I have one on that. I have this song that I wrote. Clear.
On winter walk in southern New York, not many birds I can name.
All right, so it's about seeing 4 different species of sparrow on a winter walk. So this was last winter at the Liberty Loop on the Jersey border with Orange County. But I wrote this for 2 reasons. One is like when there's something you're not good at, you're like, oh, I really should work on that. And sparrows were one of mine. Like, I should really work on my sparrows, because otherwise I would just say it's a sparrow, and then I'd keep walking looking for a more colorful bird. So I was like, oh, I should work on those. But also, if it's a cold winter day, you may not see a lot of birds. But on this bird, there were 4 different kinds of sparrows. So not only might this be something on your to-do list, I'd like to learn my sparrows a little bit. Like winter might be a good chance because you've got, between the juncos, the white crown, and the trees, you've got 3 sparrows you're not going to see elsewhere. But also you're not seeing a whole lot of other birds. And so, maybe this is, your chance in winter to get a little bit better at those. And you're like, oh yeah, I really noticed the streaked breast on the song sparrows, etc. Okay. So, this is such a diverse area. The other, what was it, Friday? Yeah, I think I was just 10 minutes away at this Audubon sanctuary. And I think the waterfowl I think I saw 450. All right. That's a big number of waterfowl. There was a harrier hawk flying around. They're special. I had seen a yellow rump warbler, half a week before. So, we live in such a great area that very often when I give talks at libraries or whatever for the Audubon Society, it's, like winter birds, or it's beginning bird ID, but you're lumping so many together, and we live in such a great area. I thought it would be neat to, give a long series where, let's just talk about hawks and other raptors today, or let's just talk about ducks today, or let's just talk about warblers and sparrows today. So that's the end of kind of this portion of the lecture series. Now just we'll regroup in the upcoming weeks and talk about like birds and food chains. What are they eating? Who's eating them? And, just kind of connect them more to their ecosystems around them next week. And then we'll kind of look at birds in fall and winter. All right, and then maybe some hints about where to go in Orange County and what you might see, birds of summer and spring. And then what I think would be the final week on environmental issues. So like every now we mention between climate change or cowbirds or, there's all these sorts of things, but maybe put that all together in one place. But maybe the week after that, I would love it if, there was a time where, because I'd love to hear all of your stories, like who's coming to your bird feeder, or what pictures have you shown, what pictures have you taken that we could maybe, have a week we tack onto the end that's just about that. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to try to answer them. If you need to go, I'm sorry for the glitch at the beginning. I just frustrates you when things update and we need IT to fix the machines. I thank you so much for your patience in that. I hope you can get out and enjoy. I mean, it's still it's in the high 70s by the end of this week, so that's not good, but it's for walking, it's nice. And then we do still have a lot of great birds in our area, so I hope you get to see some neat things. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I haven't seen any juncos yet.
We've seen a couple. We saw them, the first ones. You were taking pictures, Bethany, of a. Yeah, the Bashir.
My yard, just like the other day.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. She's a great budding photographer. She'll be, all right. The next time we schedule one, it'll be her leading these things.
Are they ground eaters?
I see them on the ground frequently, but I think that then they go up in trees after that, but I think they feed on the ground, going after seeds and the like.
Why do they, sorry, you already answered this. Why do they call a warbler a warbler?
Because a lot of the songs, the term warble officially, like, I apologize in advance. Like if you were to sing a straight note, like as it was like that I think is what warbling is. And I think when you hear like the black-throated green, it's like zee-dee-doo-zee, zee-dee-doo-zee. It's just kind of that kind of cadence to it, I think is what inspired the name. Yes.
The Veterans Day is still a class though, right?
Yes. Yeah. And if you're doing something to observe Veterans Day, I'll be recording these, so these are all available if that's more convenient. And once again, for the walk on Wednesday, stupid me forgot to factor in daylight savings time. So Wednesday at 4 p.m., I will be at 6.5 Station Road where it meets the Heritage Trail. So if you don't know where that is, if you're heading out 17M, you're getting to Route 17 in Goshen. There's the Healy car dealership, but right there is a road called 6.5 Station Road. You drive 100 yards, and that's where the trail comes along. There's a place to park. I'll have a spotting scope so that we can look at some of the birds far away and hopefully get to see some of those water. Anybody else? Yes. Hi. Great to see you.
You said that it's the blue ring that's encroaching.
Yes.
Is that just because of the climate change or is there a reason that?
Sometimes it's so, for example, as like we cut down like more forests, then that's more open areas that might favor like one species versus another. Something I've read is that some birds really did well with farmland. And, this part of the United States, just a whole lot of farmland to support, the populations of the East. I think a lot of the farms are like being let go and they're now going back into other habitats. So some birds, which, farmland was their kind of preferred habitat, then maybe they're, struggling to find their perfect habitat a bit. And then other ones, which are more like open woodsy areas, maybe thriving. So I've read that. Yeah.
Not really a question, but a follow-up on one of the walks. 2 Saturdays ago, I saw 5 sandhill cranes together at
Wow.
Loop,
Wow.
and I talked to a guy who seemed to be very knowledgeable, and he said the most he's ever seen, or any of his friends, is 7 together, and he got
Oh,
a
that's
picture of it.
wonderful. Oh, that's
So,
wonderful.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But there weren't any 2 days ago.
Yeah, and just once again, just Orange County is a place where you can see sandhill cranes. We're so lucky to live in this area. Yeah. Good. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? I hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next week.
Are there birds that are more friendly, like you can,
So I'm
Like if
sorry,
you
your
get-
question was, are there birds which are,
yeah, that you can, yeah. Anyways,
friendly?
have a good,
so there's certainly birds which are shyer that don't like you to get close and they'll fly away. Like wood ducks are shyer than mallards. Marsh wrens are shyer than Carolina wrens.
I'll ask you later. Have a good day. I mean, a good evening.
Too. Hey,
Hi, over the summer,
yeah.
there was a guy, we live in Warwick, but there was a guy sitting every Saturday night when we go pick up Chinese,
Mhm,
sitting in his car, huge,
mhm,
huge
yeah.
camera. And we didn't realize
There was an
that he
eagle's
was, there was
nest
an eagle's nest.
Oh, uh-huh.
All the way
right across from
across.
the fire station.
And it was-
And there was an
the whole
eagle sitting in
summer.
in the tree.
Yeah,
Mhm.
at
So-
some point, she was able to see, I never really saw it, you see the white head
Mhm.
sticking out. And, but we never saw anything, and we were gonna stop and ask him. And by then it was gone, whatever had happened, I guess the baby.
Well, at the Bashigal, unfortunately, this summer was a little rough because I don't know if you heard my story where there were briefly 3 nests at the Bashigal, but then eagles from the middle nest attacked the other 2. So only one.
Yeah.
We missed
yeah,
you.
yeah.
But in any case, what the Bashigal typically has is on weekends, volunteers from like 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon with a spotting scope on the eagle's nest. And so if you happen to be there, there's like a winery across the road. So you swing by, you take a stroll, you hit the winery, but you spot down, and someone just literally says like, "Hey, would you like to see an eagle?" So
Vultures.
yeah.
Turkey vultures,
Mhm.
See way up in the sky, and we have a pool, and, our dogs go out and lay down and fall asleep. And then all of a sudden, we've got
Just start
one
circling.
vulture circling,
Mm,
which they'll take 20 minutes.
mm,
And then there's 4 or 5 of them coming.
mhm,
And one of the dogs will look up around and that's sort of, and they're gone.
mhm.
But do they like have some sort of signal or something that, because you won't see any,
Mhm.
all of a sudden there's one. And you look up again and there's another one coming. Are they
So I
signaling
think
each
there's
other?
maybe 2 things going on. So maybe one thing is that, yes, because like when you find a carcass that's more than what vulture can eat. So unlike a lot of birds, like if you eat a caterpillar, hey, it's mine and you're defending a territory. Whereas if all of the vultures like just kind of always looking at each other, the minute one spots a carcass, then they all get to eat. So there's a benefit of just having more eyes looking for food. But then also,
They're so high.
but then also, because they're such big birds, they need to ride what are called thermals,
Mhm. I
updrafts.
remember you talking about
And
that.
so, if there's like a good thermal, it might not be the vultures are congregating together. It just might be they're taking use of the same air current to fly and support their weight. So that might be like, oh, this is just a great place for vultures to fly. Otherwise, like, especially if it's not the right conditions, a hawk might be able to find a thermal, but a vulture couldn't because they just need a bigger, stronger one. So that might be it too.
Okay. Oh, and then
Well,
let
it's funny too.
let me
because
show you one
we
video
had-
that I.
Sure, sure.
We had driven past Sanfordville, we live in Warwick,
Mhm.
and we drove past the elementary school, and I looked out and there was this white thing like hitting a deer carcass.
Mhm.
I thought it was somebody's dog.
I
It was
know.
an eagle.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there were 2 more on top of these posts, tall, like utility posts. And I was in shock. I did actually take a picture of it.
Oh,
but I
that's great.
couldn't find it.
You know what I've read? Bald eagles, one of the things they used to do is when there were more bison in the middle of North America, feeding on carcasses of bison that, that in winter especially, when fish are harder to find, that eating carrion is something that they can do. Yeah, I'm sorry, you've been waiting very quick.
I don't want to interrupt anything. I just have questions as well.
Okay, so I'm going to be swinging a sword in martial arts in 18 minutes, but shoot with your questions, but yes.
Wonderful.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
When did you first start birding?
Oh, so a long time ago. I'm trying to do 2 things at once.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Stop recording.